All right.
Hello.
Market update 2026.
See how it goes.
How you doing? Fletcher Wheaton, Alejandro Donahue.
How are you?
We're going to go over, a lot of people have opinions on the market. We got some facts from year over year just to see how 2025 compared to the year prior, and then what we kind of see happening for 2026. You ready to get started, or you want to have like a 5-minute intro about yourself?
Nah, come on. That's it.
All right. Nobody else wanted to hear you.
Yeah.
Okay. We had a sale in Pedregal.
Yeah.
And the buyer's like, how do I, this guy from LA, really cool guy. I don't know how to set up utilities or internet. You did it. So this is going to be to help people that are buying real estate here. And the next question they're going to have is, how do I get this in my own name? So what's your experience with both of these? CFE, which is electricity, and Telmax, which is the internet?
Yeah. Well, they had like a couple top of mind questions. One will be like, is it the same like for foreigners and Mexicans to do the change of ownership of the electric bill and the internet bill? If you want to do it from abroad and you are trying to do it through someone, which is almost always the case, you have to sign an extra paper with this, a power, just to do, so they can go to the office and do it by your name. But the thing is mostly about the documentation. That will be like the main question, okay? Like, what is the major inconvenience? And it is that you will find a lot of bureaucracy in the offices,
Yeah.
And that comes like with the documentation that is required. That's the top thing. I had to make like 5 rounds to the offices to make it done. You are not going to find an official document that brings all the documents you need, right? So you have to get to the office and they will give you sometimes this little piece of paper, handwritten, and with what you need. But it is never complete. I don't know if you have to bring an ID, they won't tell you that you have to bring it both sides. It's little things that will get you back for another round. You have to bring a title for CFE, a title, fideicomiso, or something that you can acknowledge ownership of the property, and you have to bring the whole document. Sometimes you just need like the first 5 pages, right?
Yeah.
You will need like the whole document because they will make a complete file about it. And the thing is, the first time you go, you will only be attended by someone at the entrance, and they will tell you like, you just need the 5 first pages. But then in the next appointment, when you go in,
they're all giving you different answers.
Yeah, we need the whole case.
It's pretty clear to me that like it's not worth,
it's a hassle.
So just hire somebody to do it unless you're really like a boots on the ground person. And especially you, obviously being a Mexican and speaking Spanish, if it took you 5 trips, it might take the other person like 7 trips. And then they're just going to get mad.
Oh, yeah.
So there's people here that can do it. And it was good for you to do it too, just to see the process, to see how cumbersome and bureaucratic it was.
I finally got through everything. And at the end, they were like, oh, but there is a payment missing. And I was like, you could have told me this from the beginning,
Yeah.
And of course, I just did the payment right there and it was finished like last day, but you're not going to get all the info you need to solve it.
Yeah, it sounds really bad.
Yeah.
It sounds like the DMV squared.
One time the system crashed and my appointment had to be moved to the next day.
Yeah.
That was a next round, like I have to come back, and I was like, come on, like that, right? Yeah.
Interesting. All right. So that's a little bit more than people care to chew on, I think. So.
Yeah, it can be, but come on, it obviously can be done. If you don't want to go through all the hassle, well, yeah, for sure, just hire someone.
Somebody like Mark did not want to go through that hassle.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, let's get on to the sales. So we're in 2026. Okay. We've been busy. There's a lot of people touring. So we're going to go with, year over year, 2025 versus 2024. Meanwhile, people were very bearish on both of these years entering them. I'm on record saying that I thought both years were going to be higher than the previous year. And they both were. Now people say, oh, you're in sales. You know, of course you're going to say that. We're going to give our predictions at the end here too. So anyway, what do you think? Just homes, condos, and lands through all of Baja. Do you think we're up or down?
I think land is gonna go down. I think homes are gonna go up.
Okay. And then just like overall as the market, like what percentage do you think we're up or down?
It has to be a small upgrade, like, I don't know, 10%?
Let's see. Okay. So where did they end? Up 6%. Okay. So we sold almost 1.6 billion this year on the MLS between homes, condos, and land. And it's literally almost the same amount of transactions, right? 3 less. So it's pretty much the same. That's flat. But we were up 6% from last year. And I've said this multiple times. I think that 25% of our market is done off market, not reflecting on the MLS. And it was basically a $2 billion a year. Not too shabby. And we'll get into the details here.
Okay, but that 6% up, is that higher price properties?
Yeah, I mean, clearly because you have the same amount of volume, right?
Yeah, but is it just bigger homes, or is it the same homes but the value has gone up?
We'll get into it.
Okay.
So yeah, it's definitely like a higher price point and it's more homes. All right, condo sales. What percentage of the sales, so homes, condos, and sales on a dollar basis, do the condos represent?
40%?
See what we got here. So 28% of the volume. So 448 million was the sales volume for the condos, right?
Okay.
But it was 40% of the transactions.
Okay.
Right? So that just goes to show you that it was less than a third of the sales volume, but it was over a third of the sales transactions, obviously because you have a lower price point than you would on homes. So that represents, and we'll get in to see where that was year over year as well. Home sales.
That has to be then like 50%.
Okay, let's see what we got here. So home sales, that's close to $1 billion, right? On the MLS. So 60% of the sales volume was home sales, but only 35% of the transactions. So you had more condos sold, but you had more dollar sales in homes, and that's clearly because you have a higher price point. So last year, the average sale for a home in the Cabo or San Jose Corridor was 4.2 million. Okay. This all like the high-end stuff. What do you think it was this year?
4.5?
5.88, so almost like 5.9 million. It's close to 6 million.
Okay.
That's wild. Yeah. You know, so and then in Cabo, it was more like 1 million, 1.3. What would you answer on that?
You mean like
Area, play, however micro you want to get.
well, you have to go to San Jose Corridor. That's where you're gonna get the best value for homes.
San Jose Corridor?
Yeah.
Where the average price was like 5.88.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, it jumped up. What is that? 37% last year. So you're assuming that will continue. I'm not saying it won't.
I do think that's the best value for homes.
Okay. Well, I guess you got to start marketing to higher end clients then, right? I'm not sure where I'd go on that. You know, it really depends upon the client. I think there's a lot of different places depending on that, right? I think there's some golf courses that are undervalued right now as well. Land sales, you know, so we kind of can tell this 13.5%, right? 25% of the transactions, but 13.5% of the sales. So 200 million in sales for land. And, you know, like I've seen a lot of people are land banking. We have low property taxes here. A lot of those people are starting to build. Yeah. You know, and then a lot of the like large terrenos, those are going off market, you know, of course, you know, especially like in the East Cape.
We've seen the big parcels are going completely off market.
Yeah.
And as we said, I think in the last market update, people are already changing from buying land to constructing on the land they already bought, right?
You know, so it like depends. But you've also had land sales increase, and not everybody wants to build. So maybe they were like, they found the house or they found the condo, right? This building here is not for the faint of heart. It's not for the faint of heart in the U.S. Certainly not here, being remote.
And more in the East Cape or, yeah, for sure, right?
Yeah, that's that you trust in those places. What can go wrong with land sales? We saw this. Ejido? Ejido, well, yeah, but we don't do Ejido.
Yeah.
Period. So what else can go wrong? We'll say like this. We always make sure that we have a survey done, huh? Always get a survey done, and clearly title, right? But that's why you're not going to do Ejido.
Yeah.
You know? So always get a survey done. We've seen that time and time again. The dimensions can change ever so slightly, but also just make sure it's a piece of land. We saw this on Saturday. Yeah. You know, it was like this makeshift fence on the property, and you assume that that is the property line, but you could see the fence was put up by, you know, Javier, you know, the campesino, you know, it wasn't like an official line, you know, so you see these fences up and you assume that that is the property line. That's not necessarily the case. I've seen that be like a yard off. And in one particular instance, it was a yard, and it like took a yard away from, a meter away from us, and it was bad.
We have heard the stories where it's like completely in another part, like it's half of the land, you know?
Yeah, it was in front of the third row. That's bad.
For sure. Due diligence is really important.
Yes. Los Cabos. Okay, so what percentage of the sales is Los Cabos? And we're gonna say this is Cabo San Lucas, Cabo Corridor, San Jose del Cabo, and what percentage of the sales on the MLS are in this area?
80%.
It's not bad guess. So it's basically, it's going to be 70% of the total sales, you know? So it's funny, you have a lot of people, like, hey, like people are moving out to Todos Santos or the East Cape or La Paz, Loreto. But at the end of the day, Cabo is just so easy, you know, and that's where 70% of these sales come from.
And it's bigger, you know, like maybe people are used to hearing of Los Cabos, and now they hear of Todos Santos and all of these places, and it's like, it's popping up, right? But the mainstream is going to stay here because it's the main area, you know?
Yeah. Clearly, a lot of those places, the more rural, I guess it gets, like La Paz or Loreto, you're going to have more off-market sales, so those wouldn't be showing up. But that's going to be a lot less here. So the Pacific side. Now, this includes, I've always said this, like Pedregal, which is like the tip of Cabo, is like included.
In the Pacific side?
No, is included in Cabo San Lucas. And then above that, so like Quivira on up, is included on the Pacific.
Okay. So
I'm a strong disagreement with that.
Completely.
I mean, it is on the Pacific.
I mean, yeah, but it's Los Cabos. Well, then I will go for 15%.
It's 16% of the sales, right? And you're starting to see, like Thursday, we're going to a presentation in Todos Santos, and that's $2.5 million homes. I mean, that's wild for that area. I remember when they barely had anything over $1 million. They might have had like 3 sales in a year that were over $1 million for a house, and they're launching a whole project that starts at that, you know. We were just in Todos Santos this weekend, and I remember when we were going to film a house before we got here, and we're on the dirt road, you know, and then it's like, hey, this is a big portion of land off to the beach right here, right? So there's like a 5-minute drive to the beach, and then it goes this way. It's like a $800,000 price point, and you got the map, and you're like, yeah, take a right. And I'm like, no, dude. For $800,000, we're gonna be like beachside. Yeah. They're like, no. I'm like, man, Todos is getting up there too, you know. But that market will continue to sell. A good portion of this volume is going to be done in the Gulf communities: Quivira, Diamante, Rancho San Lucas. You got another golf course community coming, right? So that is and you have a lot more homes than condos when you get onto these markets
for sure.
As well.
It's more, I mean,
home, we know the homes are more, you know, a higher price point.
We were looking for homes and condos. Yeah. And the condo market, it's really reduced, especially in Todos Santos, right? It's home market.
No, it's more of, it's much less low density, you know, more like a PDU. If you want condos on the Pacific side, it's and you don't want to be in a golf course community, you want to be like in this area, Todos Santos, Pescaderos, Cerritos, but you're going to really look at Cerritos. And we know this, like, just be careful. Be careful. People going on 2 years without a title. Thoughts, we just pretty much gave our thoughts. Yeah. East Cape sales.
Well, it has to be like 5%.
Yeah. It's pretty spot on. So it's 4.2%, right?
Yeah.
So 66 million in the East Cape. Once again, I love the East Cape. I've started going down the East Cape rabbit hole. You like the East Cape, you know, like big surfer. Infrastructure is lacking. You know, for example, in Cabo, you could come down here, you know, Mark, for example, with Cascades. He can come down here, he can stay, you know, and he can leave. And he knows everything's good because he's in a gated community. He's got the setup, all the maids, you know, everything can be done, you know, whereas if you're kind of more fringe, you know, it's not necessarily the case, you know, and it's like if you just have the house out in the middle of nowhere, you know, it's strength in numbers type thing. You know, you want to be around people and feel safe.
They have to know what they are getting into. I really like when clients come and like we check the area and it's their first time and it's you can see it in their face. It's not for them or they love it, you know. But I can truly see more people looking at the escape, experimenting what the escape is. And we have even seen developers trying to get into like what is there, like can we get into
tough.
This? Yeah.
Development's more risky right now. So it's tough, and then it's even riskier when you go to the East Cape, especially in areas where you don't have like power or water. It gets a lot riskier.
Which is almost
like I wouldn't do it. I've looked into it. East Cape condos.
You asked me this. It was like I said less than 10 condos.
Yeah. So it's 2. So last year in the East Cape, or in 2025, there were 2 condos sold. The year before, 6 were sold. You know, and this is like why I was so adamant on getting this condo project started. It would work. It just, you don't have the same feel. You don't have the power. You don't have the water, you know, and you get the water trucked in, everything, but still it's not the same. So definitely just a different area. Like that's just kind of wild, you know, and then, hey, look, a lot of this might be sold person to person, you know?
Yeah.
So
yeah, there has to be a lot on the escape that is out of the MLS, right?
Yeah, I think that's more like land, but you know, it's kind of like if you have a small, like I think it's Solimar, you know, like in Los Pariles, you know, they might have like an Airbnb that stays there, or like a lot of those are trade hands in between the owners, you know, and then like as soon as it comes on the market, they already kind of like sold it to their friend, you know. Yeah, there. It's still really, really small. I mean, you look at the number of condos sold in Cabo, 223 plus 156. That's like 400 condos sold in the same amount of time that 2 were sold. La Paz, the rest.
Well, it's going to be what? Another 7%?
Can't be 7. 6%. So La Paz is a little bit higher than the East Cape, right? Now I said that 25% of the sales are done off market in Baja. Say in La Paz, 40% are done off market. So if you sold 94 million, you probably sold like 135 million.
Okay. Yeah, 135 for sure.
You can see that's like over 300 tour sales, you know, so, and that's land, condos, and homes. You're starting to see a lot of like higher end homes there. Like, I mean, like really nice stuff, you know, but like on a cliff side.
La Paz is one of the cities in the whole country that is getting a lot of equity increase. So it's a good place, you know? It's growing.
Yeah.
But it's a different kind of vibe, for sure.
Rich from Ricardo Amigo always messes with me because he thinks I like have it out for La Paz. I don't. I just, if somebody's looking at Cabo and they can't find what they want because of price and they go to La Paz, it's apples and oranges.
Yeah.
You know?
Completely.
Loreto.
This is going to be small for the MLS right now, right?
Yeah.
I don't know, like 2%, 3%.
Let's see what we got here. Yeah, so 3% Loreto like is the fastest growing market this year, but it's funny because we have an office in Loreto, got a development at Danzante Bay, right? And one of the agents that works at our office there has been there for 20 years. It's like the amount of people selling real estate in Loreto now is like, it's unsustainable for that small of a market, you know? So everybody is like trying to get in there, and it's reminiscent of like La Paz a couple years ago, where you just started having a lot more activity. You have a lot more like a Hito parcels. So there's not much, you know, Nopalo, which is like a master plan community, Danzante Bay, and you got a couple other things, and then downtown Loreto, which there really isn't much, but there's more and more coming that way, limited by flight traffic, but really cool area. Loreto's beautiful, not for everybody. You know, like younger people might get like bored there, but it's a lot. There's a lot to do there, a lot of outdoor stuff. Cabo tourism. So we saw that Cabo got 70% of the real estate sales. What percent of the tourist dollars in all of Baja are spent in Cabo?
90%.
It's going to be the same number, 70%.
Really?
You know, we deal with a lot of people that are looking for investment, you know, and they want to get a rental income. You know, you have a lot of the foreign travelers coming here, whereas, you know, you start getting into more fringe areas, like it can change, you know, like for example, if you bought a condo here and you're Airbnb in it, and let's say you bought that in like 2019, 2020, and you're like, hey, La Paz is growing, I'm listening to this, like I want to get into it. There's a lot of competition, and it's also just a different clientele. So depending on what it is, I don't think you're going to get the same amount of average daily rate, you know, income. Now each thing is different. We see it in Tezal, you know, like good luck with Airbnb. It's kind of like a race to the bottom, in my opinion, you know. So that's a whole nother thing, but you know, it's just it's interesting because a lot of people, I think it's a good stat to know. It's 70% of the sales and 70% of the money comes to Cabo and all of Baja.
I will expect that to see more of the money here, of the tourist money here, you know, like.
Well, yeah, I mean, most of it's going to like hotels and stuff, right? But I think even the hotels are starting to wise up and say like, hey, why don't we on our tour in Todos Santos this weekend, it's like Hotel San Cristobal and then the Pescadero, like they're named, but they're owned by like Hyatt. When you go to those areas and they're like, oh, I'm staying at San Cristobal, like a boutique hotel, and it's like, it's owned by Hyatt. They just don't want you to know, because they know in those markets that San Cristobal and having a more boutique feel. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'm just super local. You know, so I think you're starting to see they're being intelligent with that, but I think a lot of that development will happen outside. I mean, there's so many hotel rooms here. And they do well, but you know, it gets to a certain point where would it be better to build a like, you know, wellness resort in like Loreto, or have the 18th one in Cabo? Of course. You know? So what's your take on 2026?
Well, I'm hoping I'm not being too positive, but I can feel the market a little bit different. Like it's growing, it's better, you know, like it's a good year. I think we're gonna kind of see the same percentages as 2025, but higher volume. That's what I feel.
Interesting. So like if you had to say on a dollar volume, you're saying we'll be up?
Yeah.
Like what percent?
I hope it goes 10%.
Okay.
Increase.
I think we're gonna be down.
Okay.
I think we're gonna be down like 2 or 3%. I think people like you and me are not gonna notice that. Well, first of all, it's not a big decline, but I think you're starting to see a separation between the people that do business and the people that don't do business, right? So I think there's a lot of people that haven't had a sale in over a year. Yeah. You know, a lot of people that used to have a ton of sales in like Tezal no longer have sales. So for me, it's interesting, like stock market, you know, the economy in the United States feels good, like it looks good, but it's kind of like the car's like clean on the outside, but dirty on the inside. You know, one little thing could kind of erode that. The wealthy have a lot of money, you know, so the people that are buying these San Jose Corridor homes, for $5, $6, $10 million. Like, I feel like those people are very capable of continuing that if they choose to do so. Although I think they're getting a little bit more cautious. I do feel like the sub-million market, especially, you know, the person that's like their first time buying outside the United States, I think they've been hesitant for 2 years, you know, and I think that will continue. So I think we'll be down just a hair, but I don't think anybody will notice it. And I think I think I checked it, man. I think there's an agent here that had like 230 million in sales this year.
Okay.
It's wild, dude. You know what I mean? That's like LA stuff. You know, what do you tell that guy? Was it down here? You know what I mean? Yeah. So, but a lot of the people that are, you know, going to that person who is a lot more sensitive to the price point, you know, because we had this, you know, like we had a really nice couple from Idaho and they were looking just under $1 million in Todos Santos. And they told us that previously they had looked in San Diego where one of their kids was. 600 square foot apartment for $2 million. Like really nice, but like, dude, 600 square feet for $2 million. So you do have to understand that that is like kind of, people say like, oh, it's expensive. It's, you know, but it's like relatively to a lot of other markets that would be comparable, I guess, in lifestyle. It's still a solid play for somebody that is open to that.
Yeah, it depends on of what you want.
And like we've seen that, I won't say with them, but there's a lot of people that are like, for political reasons too, they're just like, hey, we kind of want a new chapter. It's the same old, it's like waking up and it's Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
You know, and they're like about to retire. And if like, hey, if we just stay where we're at, like it's kind of feels like the coasting, where it's like, here you come down here and you get a second wind, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
So while we're waiting, you already answered. Would you categorize 2026 as a buyer's market or a seller's market?
It's going to be a buyer's market.
100%.
Yeah.
Same thing in the US right now. You know, so like Zillow and all these places, Resi Club, I was at their conference in New York. You know, they're projecting like a 2% growth in real estate sales. So it's the same thing. If it goes up 2% or down 2%, it's really not big news. You know, but at the end of the day, the buyers have the power. You know, now every project is different. You know, it's like you can go on a Chileno where they're selling stuff. You know,
there are options now.
Yeah. There's options, exactly. So if you're patient, you know, I think you can get a good deal.
That's what I feel from our clients right now. Like they are giving themselves the chance to choose. You know, even if they see like offers for different properties, they are seeing that they can find what they want. You know, they just have to wait a little bit, look for it, and more options are coming up. You know. So it's a really dynamic market.
Yeah.
And it's buyer.
So like, yeah, the FOMO is gone. Yeah. You know, so the fear of missing out. So it's like, hey, one of the houses they really wanted to see had an offer on it, you know, and they said they didn't want to show it, which means it was probably pretty solid, right? But that didn't take away, where if that was 4 years ago, it would have been like, oh my God, we gotta find the place now. You know, and I truly believe those people will. I know if they do it, it will be good for them. But they have options, and it's like, that's the smart buyer, you know, and I think they will get a good deal. Yeah. Just like Market Cascada's got a good deal. I mean, we got our price on that one.
That's good.
So,
Helfin,
that's all we got.
Well, hope you like it.
Like, follow everything for Alejandro, right?
Keep in mind the bureaucracy in Mexico for the...
Nah, just remind, we're on video here. He's saying up 10%. I'm saying down 2 to 3% on sales dollar figures to 2025 to 2026.
So what's the bet for the end of the year there?
I have to figure out. We'll let Larissa decide.
Let's see.
Yeah. Cool. All right, Alejandro.